one of the real important things that they do is they are indicators of stream health. So we can look at mussels and kind of see how things are going. And that brings up an interesting set of questions is, what are the dangers? What kind of things affect freshwater mussels? What kind of things are problematic for them? And there's numerous things. It's not just one particular thing that gets them and nothing else does. But one thing is pollution runoff from various sources. Siltation is another one that's a big one. Impoundment, as in where people put dams up, either big ones or small ones, block the flow of water, and then that creates a different environment, changes the hydrology of the mussel habitat, and so a lot of mussels don't or can't adjust to that, so that causes problems with them. And loss of the riparian zone, and I don't know how many people know what the riparian zone is, but there's a little strip of land that people leave between the farm ground and the stream. And the bigger that is, the better, because anything running off of the farmland will filter through that before it gets to the stream, including silt and other things. But if there's a very narrow riparian zone or a lack of one, then everything just goes straight into the stream, and it really affects the mussels. So how that shows up in the mussels, if there's a problem, it will show up in either no reproduction of the mussels, or there would be some actual loss of mussel species or mussel numbers. So I've got some shells here. Some of these mussels have very colorful names. This one is, they all have scientific names, but they also have common names too. This one is called the pink paper shell, and it's pink and it's kind of thin. This one is called a wabash pigtoe, and if you have an imagination, you can figure maybe it looks like a pigtoe or something. And then this one is called a white heel splitter. And that may have a good reason for that one, because of the fact that when they are living, they're situated into the substrate or in the stream bottom about like this. So maybe this much is sticking up, and then the rest of it is below the surface, or the bottom. So if you step on that, you might end up with a sore foot. So, and they call it white because the inside is white. This is oftentimes what we call mother of pearl, the freshwater version of it. So one of the things about mussels that, aside from the fact that the shells are cool, is I think the number one thing that is most fascinating about freshwater mussels is the way they reproduce. And I don't want to get too technical because it gets real complicated, but in mussels, a lot of people wonder, well, are there boy mussels and girl mussels? Actually, there are. The sexes are separate. You have females and males. The female is the one that holds the eggs in gill pouches. And then, of course, the male fertilizes the eggs by releasing into the water. She has an intake siphon that brings all that in, fertilizes the eggs, and then these turn into what we call glochidia. But they're not mature mussels yet. That's where it gets really interesting. Is in order for them to become mature mussels so that they can be little and grow, they have to have a fish host to transform. The little mussel fertilized eggs have to get onto either a fish's gills or its fins to transform into what we know as little baby mussels that can then grow up. No kidding. So, who would have guessed, right? Yeah. So this is where an enormous number of variations have come about to get that little glochidia, that little fertilized egg, onto this fish. So you're thinking, well, how do they do that? Mussels have certain things that they can do, one of which is there is a mussel, it's not this one, but there is a mussel that has a similar shape to this one, that the fleshy part of the animal that extends outside the shell, when she's all comfortable, this part of it right here has an extension on it that looks like a little fish. And so when she's gravid, as in pregnant, ready to release her fertilized eggs so that a fish can get them, she displays this little lure. It looks like a little lure. And the fish is thinking, that looks like food. And so it really attracts the fish. The fish will strike at it, and actually then she releases all of these little fertilized lochidia, and it gets into the fish's face, basically, and they are able to attach to either the gills or the fins, depending on the kind of fish. So some mussels have little lures that look like aquatic insects. Some of them have like web-like things that the fish swim into. There is an enormous amount of variation in the mussels. Some of them have little worm-like things that they actually crank out to attract the fish's attention. So once they're on the fish, excuse me, I've had allergies, terrible. Once they're on the fish, then they insist onto the fish's gills or fins. And it doesn't hurt the fish typically unless the infestation would happen to be really, really heavy. Sometimes the fish get kind of itchy with this going on. So the little fertilized eggs insist on the fish's gills or the fins, are there for a period of time, either a few days or a few weeks or months or just however, depending on certain things. And then they are transforming to little baby mussels. They break out of the cistern, they drop off to the bottom, and then they're ready to go as little tiny. Okay, sure. Okay, is that? Okay, is that any difference? No?
No. Okay, I gotta go anyway.
Sorry to interrupt everybody.
Power issues.
So, if everything goes right, in the end you have another generation of little mussels.
Check. Okay, I think we got this one.
Okay.
So if you want to use this,
Okay.
you can hold it or you can look it here.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, how about right there?
Cool.
Does that work?
Yeah, and then just angle it up.
Okay. How's that sound? Is that better? Okay. I'm kind of loud anyway, so, and I move around a lot because I have all the visual things that I'm showing people.
There's less power again.
So.
We're trying, sorry.
That's okay. I'm loud. Just ask my husband. So you can see where some of the issues can come from. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Is it one fish and one expulsion of the eggs, or is it multiple expulsions?
That's a good question. Typically, you've got one fish that's in the right place at the right time. If you have numerous fish that are looking at that same lure, there is that probability that more than one could get infected with one mussel, little one. And another thing that brings up an interesting point too is many mussels are very post-fish specific. That means whereas a batch might be good for several different mussel species, some other mussel species can use only maybe one or two kinds of fish and that's it. So you can see where the problem would come is if that fish is lost in the environment, in the habitat, then you also lose that mussel. So that's a really big deal. So habitat is everything, environment is everything, stream quality is absolutely everything. So, and that's what's so cool about the Flint Hills is because you have all of this untouched area that is cleaner and more pristine than what a lot of places are. So that's a big plus for the mussels is to have those clean streams and good environments. So, and what I wanted to do too is kind of just open up to questions just a little bit. If anybody else had any questions, because this is your chance. Okay?
if you catch a fish, can you detect anything on the fish?
I don't know if you can see them. Can you, Brian? You really can't see them with the naked eye that well, can you?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to the question.
The little cysts on the gills, you can't really see them as well with the naked eye.
You can see it, but it's not real.
It takes magnification,
right, to really
pretty decent magnification to see them. But
And you need to know exactly what they look like.
right, yes, it does help to make sure that that's what you're seeing and not some other. I don't know if there's any other kinds of gill parasites fish get that might resemble those or not, but so you can see the importance of this whole ecosystem. You know, you've got fish and mussel, and how, you know, the fish doesn't have to have the mussel, but the mussel really needs to have the fish. That's kind of the bottom line with it. So it's really pretty cool. And
How do they attach themselves?
that is a very good question. The little Glochidia, they're kind of shaped like this. They're very small, and they have hooks that when they get onto the tissue, they will actually close shut and clamp onto it, and then the fish's tissue takes care of that kind of encystment situation and makes a little cyst around it. So yes, they do have little claws, kind of little hooks to hold on to. That's a good question. The fin ones have more of a hook than the gill ones do, because the gill tissue is a little harder to clamp onto than what the fin tissue is more hard to clamp onto than the gill tissue would be. So that's a good question.
Freshwater mussel edible.